اللهم صل على رسول الله اللهم علمنا ينفعنا وانفعنا بما زدنا علما انك انت العليم الحكيم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم اجمعين. Alhamdulillah. So, just quick announcement before we begin. Just hope you're aware. I did put a announcement on the Telegram group a few days ago. So the book, Depression and Anxiety, uh, the Cause of Jim of the Quran, based on Imam Ramadan's TV series called Al-Ka'aba, Asbab al-Ilaj, just translated summary by myself and Brother Hazm, who's with us. That's now available on Amazon, alhamdulillah. So you can get your copies, and I think it will be published in Singapore soon. I think Ustaz Jalali will be publishing that soon in Singapore. And I think there'll be you're going to put a, just correct me if I'm wrong here, you're going to put up on the Nawabooks website, you're going to put up all the Amazon links as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I think by tomorrow I'll put up for those that want to buy, they can pre-order the book because it's in the printers now. It'll be
Mhm.
ready. The printed version will be ready most probably 3rd or 4th August. But I'll put up the link, the website on the website, Nawabooks website, for those who want to pre-order the books, and also the
Mhm.
links for Amazon as well, as per normal, inshallah.
Yeah, sure. And as for Lulu, that's going to take a bit longer. I think I might need until, yeah, I mean, actually around that time, or maybe around fourth or fifth, I'll have the proof copy. I'll be able to approve it and go live on Lulu as well. Another option. Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, so we're on page 21 in the translation. This is the greatest danger, and I think this would be counted as maybe the third chapter. I think it is. I checked that. Yeah, it is the, yeah. This is it's like the second chapter. So the greatest danger. So again, just to recap what we've been discussing, alhamdulillah, what we've been discussing is Imam al-Buti in this book, he's trying to answer this question of why is it that there is so much quote unquote activity? There's so much Islamic activity. We have so many conferences and retreats and events and talks and lectures and seminars and halaqas. We have all these things going on, but our our overall situation doesn't seem to improve. We don't seem to be back at the peak of civilization, world domination, whatever you want to call it. We're not there. How come we're not there? And what Imam al-Buti is getting at is he's saying, well, it's not about the outward. Yes, the outward there are outward obligations that we're all commanded to fulfill, praying and fasting and paying zakat and performing hajj. We're all doing that. But it's the inward issue. What are our intentions? What are our desires? What are our ambitions? Where are our hearts in all of this? This is what he's getting at. So this chapter is called The Greatest Danger. And he says, do you know what it is? And he starts off by telling you what it is not. It is not the invading enemy who settles in and colonizes your homeland. Okay, so that's not it. So again, and this ties in again with volume one, Man and Justice on Earth, because I don't know if I told you this before, but what got me interested in Man and Justice on Earth was I asked the Imam's grandson, Dr. Mahmoud al-Bulti, I asked him, I said, is there a book that addresses the victim mentality, right? I don't know the victim mentality is a common idea in the Arab world, but the victim mentality, just to summarize, the victim mentality is this idea where you feel sorry for yourself and you blame everyone else for your problems, right? You just feel sorry for yourself, and it's like, I'm in this situation, whatever bad situation that you're in, it's not my fault. It's the fault of so and 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 so. It's because he does this and she does this and so and so. And that's why I'm in this miserable situation. But Imam al-Bulti, you see here, he's addressing it again. He says, it is not the invading enemy who settles in and colonizes your homeland, right? So we can't sit there and blame the Americans or the British or the French or the Israelis. That's not the point. You say there's it's all their fault. That's why we don't have our khilafah. That's why we don't have our this and we don't have our that. It's because of them. But if you back it up, you think, okay, well, what gives them? This is what Imam Multi will be discussing. We'll be looking at this. What gives them the idea that they can do this? You see, an enemy's not going to attack. Here's the thing: an enemy's not going to attack unless they sense weakness. right? They have to be able to see the weakness. And this is it's an interesting point. Like when you read about, for example, if you read about the history of the Crusades, right? So you had that papal bulls issued in 1095 in the Gregorian calendar, and then the Crusaders arrived in Jerusalem in 1099, and then they were there. Um, and they butchered and slaughtered all kinds of people in Jerusalem. And then they were there until 1187. They were there for 88 years until the Battle of Hattin, when Saladin Ayyubi came back and kicked them out and restored the order. Now, so what was going on at that time? But if you actually look at the state of the Muslims before Saladin Ayyubi came along, you'll see a lot of fracture. You're going to see, the Fatimid Shiites are ruling Egypt. You've got the Hashishin running wild in Sham. You have all this division and fracture. So when you have all the division and fracture, that leaves an opening for the enemy to come in, right? So in that 88-year period, this is something that Imam Ramadan talks about in his book Al-Jihad fil Islam. He explains that what was happening in that 88-year period is that Salatin Ayyubi and then people like Noruddin Zengi, what they did, because they were ruling Egypt and Sham, is they built madrasas everywhere. They built madrasas everywhere. And then they raised up a whole generation of tulab al-ilm, a whole generation of people who were uh, uh, not just knowledgeable in religion. So these are people who had memorized the Quran, people who knew their fiqh, they knew their hadith, they knew tafsir, they knew all the other knowledges, but they were also righteous people. They fasted, they denied prayers, they were close to Allah. They had all these features, and it was these people who became the army. These people eventually became Salatin Ayyubi's army that took back Jerusalem, right? So again, we're going back to this. These are people who had conquered the inward and were then in a position to conquer the outward. And on that theme of conquering the inward before he conquered the outward, what did Salatin Ayyubi do? He got rid of the internal problems first before dealing with the external enemy, right? So he dealt with the Hashishin. He took over Egypt from the Fatimids, right? That's why Al Azhar University is a Sunni institute now because of what Salatin Ayyubi did. Took that all over, and then went after the Christians. And I was like, oh, you see. So it's about dealing with the internal first, right? You can't if you want to clean the neighborhood, you have to sweep your own porch first. So we can't blame these external factors. Oh, it's them. No, 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 no. They're doing what they're doing because they're sensing your own weakness. That's what this is about. So he says, not the invading enemy who settles in and colonizes your homeland. It's not the sect that breaks ranks and causes disunity, right? Like the Hashishin, for example, or the Shia, or whatever. It is not those that warn of mass destruction, right? If you think back, this is probably, I'm guessing this might have been written 20 years ago or more. But if you think, right, the back of those days of weapons mass destruction, it is not that dreadful group that threatens half the world because the rate of production cannot keep up with the rate of population growth, right? These are the Malthusians who always warn about this, the impending doom. There's not enough food on the planet. The population is growing too much. We're all going to die. No, right? Because we have to understand that Allah has made this earth for us. This is our abode temporarily, right? I think the best analogy to think of this is that this is not our home. We're not from here. We are the extraterrestrials, right? We came from Jannah, Allah places here. But the best analogy that I can think of, and Allah knows best, is this world is like a large hotel. That's what it is, right? Everyone's room is booked and paid for. If you're here, you're supposed to be here. And your checkout time is in Allah's knowledge. Allah will tell you when you're going to check out, and your job is to be ready for that, right? You don't want to be caught out. Like, sir, your room needs to be vacated in the next 5 minutes. Oh, I'm not ready. I need to shower. Oh, well, too bad. So you have to be uh, ready for that day, for that call. But again, that's not something to about the point. That's not something to blame. We're not trying to blame the external. So Imam Bolti said the greatest danger is something more severe and more dreadful. It is that which is able to infiltrate homes. It allows weapons to explode and fuels to be set ablaze. It causes animosity and division. And he says, what is it? It is your own nafs, right? It's our own soul between our own side. That's the greatest danger. That is greatest danger. And again, this goes back to, you go back to the first book, Man Lost Justice on Earth, and I believe it's also in the civilization book, the approach to civilization, human civilization, the Quran. There's the story of Omar, Sayyidina Omar al-Khattab, when he gives advice to Sa'd ibn Waqqas, because he's going to go lead the battle, lead the Muslims in battle in Qadisiyah against the Persians. And he says, we don't defeat our enemies because we have greater equipment or greater numbers, because we don't. They have greater equipment, they have greater numbers. Right? Theirs is greater. He says, the enemy, or it says the army, the Muslim army is not meant to fear the enemy the most. The Muslim army is meant to fear their own selves more than the enemy. That's what the Muslim army is supposed to do. We fear our own selves. He says, because we don't, Allah doesn't give us, because Allah, what he's stressing is Allah doesn't give us victory just because we're Muslims. Allah gives us victory because our obedience is greater. Our obedience is greater, right? Our obedience to Allah has to be greater than whatever they're doing. That's what it comes down to. So we have to fear our own souls. Do not fall into sin when you're in battle. Do not fall into disobedience. Do not fall into, again, the whims and caprices of your own ego. Do not fall into these things. So Imam al-Buti stresses this, and this is why this is all in bold. It says, yes, the human soul does not cooperate with righteous action and follow the true Islamic way, or that the human soul that does not cooperate with righteous and action and follow the true Islamic way is the greatest danger for the Muslims of today, right? A soul that does not cooperate. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. And he said, this is because Islam in its essence is nothing more than a refining and nurturing of the soul. So again, this is something that is coming up. I'm actually started working on PP6, Pinnacle Papers, Volume 6. And this is called Sil Minhaj al-Rabbani, right? The secret of the divine approach. Some secrets of the divine approach. Is that a good translation? Jalaluddin?
Quite okay, it's quite okay, it's quite good.
Yeah, some secrets of a divine approach. And so Imam al-Buti, actually, like one of the first chapters is he talks about the durura, like what's the durura, what's the necessity of having faith in Allah. And he says, because we are Allah's khulafa on earth, because Allah created us to take care of the earth and develop the earth, Allah has given us all these capacities. All those capacities and attributes and abilities that we have, if they're not tempered and controlled and regulated by Allah, then the result is chaos, right? The result is oppression. The result is that you're always is that people are going to use human beings, if they're not regulated by Allah, they're not aware that Allah is watching them. They're going to go into conflict, right? And then they're going to start competing and fighting over resources and power and land and wealth and whatnot. And eventually you're going to have one group is going to be the powerful, dominant, enslaving group, and then the other group is going to be the dominated, enslaved group, right? And he said that's exactly how it was. That's exactly how it was in Fir'aun's system, right? So Fir'aun and his people, they were the dominant enslaving group, and they deified themselves. And Fir'aun said, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la, I'm your Lord Most High," and then he was enslaving the children of Israel, and even enslaving his own magicians, because his own magicians believed that everything they did, they believed that their capacities as quote unquote magicians was bi'izzati Fir'aun. They believed it was by Fir'aun's might. And so Imam al-Buti talks about that story of the magicians in the Quran. He says, when they realized that Allah was all powerful, they submitted to Allah, and they said to Fir'aun, "Do what you want. We don't care." Right? They were free from that slave because they realized that Allah exists and Allah's in charge of everything. They've completely forgot about Fir'aun. They said, "Do what you want to us. We don't care." Right? We've accepted the truth. We've accepted the Lord of Musa and Harun alayhim assalam. So that's what Islam is doing. Islam is meant to be doing that. It's meant to be controlling these capacities because we have the capacity, because we have these abilities, these attributes, these characteristics to develop the earth. Allah has given them to us so that we develop and cultivate the earth. We have it within us to unleash mass destruction. We can do that. But if we're tempered and we're regulated by Allah and the Sharia, then we're going to do things properly and we won't oppress one another. So So again, what he says is Islam, its essence, is nothing more than refining and nurturing the soul, and therefore it gets rid of selfish arrogance and so forth, and all these other horrible things in the worldly life. And then one's behavior becomes one of the fruits of one's soul, of the soul's slave to Allah. So when you recognize you're slave to Allah, then this is manifested in your behavior. And then the soul becomes certain meaning of this life, which is really nothing more than a bridge to the eternal life. And then you start realizing, yes, that this life is merely the bridge to the eternal life. And you do not get caught up in worldly ambitions. Because again, this way you have to get in this book is we're trying to understand why we don't have that success. Because again, a lot of the quote unquote Islamic work or Islamic activity or Dawah activity, whatever you call it, a lot of it is not tied to it's not tied to the akhirah. It's not tied to slave to Allah. A lot of it's tied to worldly ambitions and interests. That's what we have to bring these two into harmony. So he says here that the desired harmony between the reality of the Muslim soul and this Islamic behavior, this is what will bring Muslims together in cooperation. And then amongst Muslims, you will not find any reason for animosity or mutual opposition. There will not be any malice or hatred. There will be no worldly life for them to break ranks and compete over. Because again, when people recognize, when you're involved in this Islamic activity, when you recognize that this is all about the afterlife, right? This is all about the akhirah. I'll give you an example. Some people ask this question. Um, uh, so because again, for example, like when we do dawah, right, and we're trying to call people to Islam, we can fall into the mistake of measuring our success by how many people become Muslim. Okay. And this is, I talked about this in my book, The Big Step, the Shahada scorecards. I've brought 3,000 people to Islam, right? That's when we measure it. We say like I'm a successful dad because I brought 3,000 people to Islam, right? And there are issues with that because you have to ask, where are those people now? Are they still Muslim? You have to ask that question. But the point is that Allah has said in Surah Yasin, there's a 36th chapter, verse 17, there's nothing upon us except the conveyance of the message. The asl of all of this, the foundation of all of this is that we are doing dawah because Allah has commanded us to. And that is our job. That's what Allah has commanded us to do. Whether people accept it or not is not our responsibility. Our responsibility is the conveyance. Our responsibility is to put the message out there. And as long as we do that, the reward is we have the reward, whether they say it or not. Because again, it goes back to them and what their issue is and what they love and what choice they made when whether they meant it or not when they said Bala Shahidna in Surah Al-Araf 172. That's what it goes back to. We have to keep doing it regardless of the situation. Someone else once asked me, for example, this is a guy who was not Muslim. He asked me this question. He said, for example, if it's prophesied that knowledge is going to decrease and diminish over time, why would you keep studying? Right? Because it's about Allah. It's about Allah, right? Because so for example, I can accept, right? We can all accept, we're studying, we're learning about the deen. We can accept, we're not going to reach the ranks of the people in the centuries before us, but we're still working to please Allah. That's what it's about. I'm not thinking about the worldly consequence. Like, okay, I won't reach the rank of Imam and no, I won't reach the rank of so and so forth. Fine. I can still do what I can do and I can still seek Allah's reward. So we're looking at, you have to keep that in mind that the consequences in the next life. It's always in the next life. It's in the next life. There might be some rewards in this life, but ultimately you're looking at the next life and pleasing Allah because you want to go back to Allah with something. I still did it. I still sought the knowledge. I still translated the knowledge. I still taught the knowledge. I still called people to Islam, so on and so forth. Imam al-Buti then he says, but when the soul has had none of this nurturing, which is the state of our souls today, then there's this dangerous dichotomy between the Muslim. His personality is split between outward Islamic behavior, right? So he's praying, fasting, and so forth. But he has a soul that is impatient, distracted, and drowning in worldly hopes and selfish ambitions. And he says, and the most unique from such a soul is that this person will uh, take on aspects of Islam that will benefit him, but he doesn't want to take on aspects of Islam that actually cause him harm. And again, this does have to do with this does have to do with, I might sound like a broken record. This does have to do with love, right? Like if you're not sure whether you love Allah or love yourself more, that's where this is going to come in, where Allah will command you to do something. You think, well, if I do that, it's not going to benefit me. It's going to harm me. It's going to affect my business, or it's going to affect my worldly ambitions, whatever. That's a sign that there's more love for something else, or a lot more love for yourself than there is for Allah. So a person like this is outwardly fulfilling his obligations to Allah, but inwardly his soul is chasing this world. And the religion is therefore like a shield that he uses to hide himself, to hide his faults from people. But the reality is, Islam, the religion, will not be deceived by any of this. And then Imam al-Buti gives a few examples. He gives a few examples uh, of people who give excuses, right? For example, there were people who said, I don't want to take part in jihad against the Romans because I'll be tempted by the blonde women, right? And they quote from the Torah by ayah 49. Among them are those who say, give me permission to stay. Do not put temptation in my way. Have they not fallen to that very temptation? Right? These are weak excuses, or people saying, I don't want to leave, I don't want to go out and fight because I'll leave my wives and my children alone in Medina. Like no, you're just looking for excuses. You're thinking about worldly things. You're not putting Allah first and foremost. So Imam al-Buti says, how can Allah's victory, on page 24, how can Allah's victory for the Muslims be realized if their tongues and statements are just claims made over here, while their souls are wandering over there, competing and vying for this worldly life and its desires? So we can't just be talking about it, but not implementing. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. This is something I've actually seen myself. Um, I know of a person. I won't mention any names. Don't worry, it's none of you. But I know of a person. For example, he's a khatib, right? So he gives uh the khutbah on Friday, right? But he says to himself, because I'm going to give the khutbah on Friday, and I need to prepare, and I need to be well rested in order to give a proper khutbah, and so that everyone understands me and I don't get exhausted. That means I need to get good sleep the night before, and therefore I should pray Fajr at home and not go to the masjid. It's weird, isn't it? It's a bit weird because, as everyone knows, or the other man have said, the greatest Jama'ah of the week is Jumu'ah, right? Obviously, the greatest Jama'ah after Jumu'ah is Fajr on Jumu'ah, right? That's a contradiction, right? To go on the minbar and tell people to worship Allah and talk about Allah and run to Allah, but then you've got to have your sleep, and therefore you won't go to the masjid. Like it doesn't fit. Like if you're going to be calling people to Allah, calling people to Islam, your actions have to match your behaviors. All right, or your actions have to match your words. You can't be saying one thing but then not doing it yourself. And it's not important about uh, how much energy you have or how well you've rested, because ultimately the success of your khutbah lies with Allah. Think about that. The success of your khutbah, your speech, whatever it is, it lies with Allah. It doesn't lie with how much sleep you've had or how well you've eaten, or did you have your vitamins today? It doesn't rely on that at all, right? The success of your khutbah, whatever, relies on Allah. It's all with Allah. So he goes on to say that with these types of, again, like I mentioned these things about talks. He mentioned these kind of things, like you might hear moving or fear-inspiring words, you might see brilliant things, but it doesn't strike fear in the enemy, right? And again, what comes from the heart reaches the heart. What comes from the tongue reaches the ear. Imam al-Buti also, in this chapter, he talks about something else. He talks about this issue of trust, and I think this is a very, very important thing. He talks about trust. So when people are vying for worldly things, and they're after certain positions. Like, I want to be the biggest speaker, or I want to be the biggest da'i, I want to be the biggest author, I need to be the most famous person. Then they start distrusting other people. It becomes a competition. Like, oh, I don't think I want to be around seen with that guy, or I don't think people should be looking at that guy. They should be looking at me. And then they start denigrating other people, and then it becomes just a competition for the nafs. It's just a very, very sick and sad competition, and that prevents people from cooperating, working with each other, and saying, "Hey, that guy's actually doing good work. Support him, help him, go get benefit from him." And that guy over there, that sister over there, she's doing really good work. Go work with her and support her. Right? It becomes an ego competition, and as we covered before, if that trust is not there, then you can't cooperate. Right? There's no way to build a cohesive jama'ah or bigger jama'ah and work and therefore ascend that ladder of civilization, so to speak. Um, and he goes on to say that these people do not love one another. Their souls are attached to this worldly life and profiting from it. Envy spreads between them. And he says maybe one of them will have more sleepless nights worrying about this than worrying about the state of the Muslims. And I think that this was a really standout point there, is that, like, if you're involved in this kind of work, like, well, like, you have to ask her, like, what are you really worried about? Are you really worried about your own position, your own status, your own reputation, or are you actually worried about the wider situation of the Muslims? Are you worried? Okay, I'm worried that a lot of Muslims are falling into temptation. I'm worried about the threat of atheism, or I'm worried about the threat of Christian evangelism. I mean, evangelical activity. Like, are you really worried about these concerns, or are you more thinking about yourself? Right? It's a really good thing to check yourself, uh, and think again. I'm in that situation. I'd also check myself when I'm thinking about putting out books. Am I thinking about, oh, is the book going to sell well, or am I thinking about, okay, is the book going to benefit people? Right? I have to check myself and say, no, that this I have to tell myself, this book, when it gets out there, is it going to benefit people? Are people going to read it? And that uh, is the most meaningful thing, right? It's not about the worldly benefits. It's the fact that, and I'm sure you get this too, Jalaluddin. I think it's one of the most meaningful things is when someone sends you an email, or someone sends you a comment, or someone maybe approaches you, a complete stranger might approach you and say, you know, I read such and such book and it changed my life. I read such a book and it had such a profound effect on me. And thank you so much, and keep doing what you're doing. That's a beautiful reminder of what it's all about. Like, you're trying to stay focused, and you're trying to do this just for the general benefit of people, not for your own benefit, and accept and submit to Allah's will, that Allah is using you for the benefit of other people, which is a blessing in and of itself, a massive blessing in itself. Um, so I think we're on 36 minutes now. So I'll just finish on this one point. Um, and he quotes this hadith from Abu Dawood, where the Messenger of Allah warned the Muslims about this greatest danger. And he said, the nations will invite one another to attack you, just as people invite one another to eat from one dish. Right? So again, think of a lot of the wars in the Muslim world recently. Think about the Crusades. Right? Why did things happen? And the companions, they replied and they said, will we be few in number at that time, Ya Rasulullah? Right? So if all these nations are going to gather around and just attack us like people eat from a plate, is that because we're going to be few in number? Again, so they're thinking, there's a logical question. Like, is that because we're just a tiny force of people? We don't have a lot of weapons. We don't have a lot of equipment. That's what this all is implied. And he says, no, you will be many, but you will be scum, like scum of a flood, right? Like the foam on the ocean, right? That's what you are, right? You're just this useless fluff. Allah will remove the fear of you from the hearts of your enemies. You see, that's why I was saying earlier in the session, that they don't just attack because they can, or because they want. They attack because they can sniff, they can smell that weakness, and that's why they attack. And he said, Allah will remove the fear of you from the hearts of your enemies, put this peace in your heart. And they said, and then they asked, what is this wahan? What is wahan? And he replied, hubb dunya, right? Love of this worldly life, karihatul maut, and hatred of death. Right? So this hadith sums up perfectly what this greatest danger is. So we'll open there for Q&A, inshallah.
Barakallahu fikum, Ustaz Mahdi. Thank you for the lecture. So we'll open up for questions for those who are interested to ask or you want to share anything. Fadal.
You might have to start it again as usual. You might have to kick it off again as usual.
I think what struck me when reading the first part of the second chapter of the book, CD, is I remembered Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, when he came to Singapore, he gave a lecture. And then he said one of the tribulations that is facing the Ummah now, apart from like, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that he will test us with women and all, and wealth and your children and things like that, right? Because those are all the things that will distract you, but from the right path. I said one of the tribulation that is facing now for the Ummah, and it's actually causing the Ummah to recline or not able to move ahead, is being distracted, like a general distraction, especially nowadays with to me with social media, with mobile phones. Nowadays, because of social media, what's facing our Ummah is a short attention span. That's why now marketers, they want to get the attention of their customers. They know that, okay, the customer's attention nowadays, because it's very short, it's like the first 10 seconds of the video, or the video can only be 20 seconds just to take the message across. If the message or the content is longer, the person will just skip it. Like, have you seen this before, where people, I've seen this before, where people just on their Instagram or on their TikTok, and they'll just browse through videos for hours. Like, they don't even look at the full video. It's just like few seconds they flick, few seconds they flick, few seconds they flick.
I mean, flicking is actually an old thing, though. Flicking, people used to do it with TVs, right? Back in the day, and this was the case, especially in the United States. When cable TV was first invented, right? Because I mean, obviously, like when TV first came when TV first came around, and you had 3 channels or 4 channels, right? I remember the UK was like that, like, because in the 1990s, I grew up in Canada in the 1990s, and when they had when cable TV first came out, so you had about 30 channels, right? So you just let it flick, like, no, 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 and you just like, once you've done all 30 channels, why do you do it again?
Yeah.
You just watch, right? But then going to the UK, so the UK at the time, I remember the UK because we used to visit family in the UK, and cable TV had not taken off there yet, so you still had 4 channels. So how do you flick through 4 channels? BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Channel 4, BBC One. You can't find your thing. I mean, the question. I think the question people have to ask when you're spending so much time on social media or flicking through YouTube or flicking through is you have to ask, like, what is it that you're looking for, right? What is it that you're looking for? Are you looking for a job? Or are you looking for a wife? Or what are you looking for? There's clearly something missing, and we've talked about that before. We've talked about that before in the previous book, and it's alluded to in the depression book as well. It's alluded to in here. Shameless plug. It's alluded to in the depression book as well. In the appendix about love. that's this topic of love, which is that you have to remember in this life, you are always, always, always going to feel that something's missing. Okay, that's just the fact of the matter. You're always, always, always going to feel something's missing. Why? Because as we discussed in Surah as Allah mentions in Surah Al-A'raf, the seventh chapter, verse 172, when Allah gathered all the souls and said, "Alas bi rabbikum," and everyone said, "Qalu bala shahidna." Everyone agreed. Everyone said, "Yes, you are our Lord." What this indicates, right? Like the law of this ayah is that we were all there, right? We were all in that in the soul form. We were all in Allah's presence, and then we came into this world. So your soul is always going to be yearning for that reunion with Allah. Right. This is why we love looking at big views. We like looking at as far as the eye can see. That's why we love these kinds of things. We enjoy looking at the rolling hills or mountains or the wide open sea. We love these kinds of things. So you're always going to feel that. So that's always the question. Like when you find yourself in that frame of mind, like just ask yourself, like, what are you looking for? And you're not going to find it. You see, and this is again going back to the first book, Man, you're not going to find it through material gratification. You're not going to find it on social media. You're not going to find it through having lots of money. You're not going to find it through having many wives, or you're not going to find it through these things. You're going to find it through the dhikr of Allah, the dhikr of Allah that takes it back. And this is why it might be wise. And this is a practical step because there's a question coming. I need to answer, but as a practical step. But I've done this myself sometimes. If I find that I get too distracted by things on my computer or I get too distracted by things on my phone, then I'll put good things on my computer and good things on my phone, right? So I'll just put the Quran app on my phone. I'll put the Quran app on my laptop or Dalal Khairat or some du'as, right? So I'm not using my computer just for that thing. I try to associate some good things with my computer. And that's what you can do, right? You can turn off Instagram or Twitter, but open up your Quran app, or open up your Dalal Khairat app, or open up your Dua app, and just read those, and that will bring a lot of peace of mind to your heart. It won't cure all of it because again, you're always if something's missing. But again, that's something that is missing, and especially if you're a Muslim, that's something that's missing is that yearning for Allah. You just don't know it, and you can't really express it or put a finger on it, but that's what it is. So put yourself in dhikr. Absolutely put yourself in dhikr with some Quran, some dua, some adhkar, some dala'il, some salawat on Prophet Sallallahu do that. And use your phone. People might look at you and think you're just on your phone, but you know what you're doing and Allah knows what you're doing, and inshallah you'll be rewarded for it. Allah knows best. Does that answer your question? Ustaz Jalaluddin?
I don't have a question. It's just something I just wanted to share. It's okay.
Oh, okay, okay, alhamdulillah. Okay. Okay, so Mary has a question. Thinking about the self and self-improvement should not only be the aim, it should be that we are fearless of the people and spreading the truth. How do we do that? Should we be working on our own families, on our own circle first, and then work out? Okay. So so there's two brilliant points here, two brilliant points that the sisters raised. So the first one is yes, self-improvement is not only the aim, right? I recently did this. I did a seminar on the depression book weekend before last down in Luton, talking about this. And um, when we look at tackling things like depression, anxiety, or self-improvement in the general sense, okay, uh, what makes us different from, say, the Jordan Petersons, the Jocko Willings of the world, and the other people who are in what you might call the self-help industry, is that we have an intention behind it, right? So like what they're going to tell you is that if you want to get over depression, get over whatever your situation is in, and you want to feel more positive, be grateful. That's what they'll say to you. Be grateful, right? Write down a gratitude list. Write down all the things that you're grateful for. Have a grateful attitude. But then it's like, okay, but um, be grateful to who? Right? They don't go that far. Be grateful to who? right? So we supposed to know you're grateful to Allah for the things you have, and it's the same thing here. Like the sister made the brilliant point, like self improvement. So we're not seeking self improvement just for the sake of self improvement, right? For example, like you don't take care of your physical health because, for example, when they take care of the physical health, it's because they want to have the quote unquote beach body. That's what they say, right? I want to look good because the summer is coming and I'm going to go to the beach. I need to look good. No, you're taking care of your physical health. Why? Because your body's an instrument of worship. That's why. Your body is an instrument of worship. That's why Allah gave it to you. It's an amana. You're taking care of your body so that you can fulfill your obligations to Allah. You can pray properly. You can do fast. You're able to bear with the fasting. You're able to do umrah. You're able to do hajj. You're able to work and provide for your family. That's why you want to be healthy, not to show off or just to feel good about yourself. No, you want to do these things for that reason. So um, that's a brilliant point. Now, should we be working on our families and our own circle for? Yeah, absolutely. You work on yourself and your families because Allah says that in Surah Al-Tahrim, Ayah 6, "Qu anfusakum ahlikum naran waquduha an-nas wal hijara," right? Save yourselves and your families from the fire whose fuel is men and stones. So you work on yourself first, right? You need to work on yourself first, and then your family, and then it spreads out. That's absolutely the case because you can't work on your family if you don't work on yourself because your family will be thinking like, wait, well, what are you doing? Right? You can't be telling me to be righteous when you're wallowing in sin or you're not putting any effort in. That's not going to work. So if you work on yourself, that's going to have influence on your family because again, you're again, we always say in English, actions speak louder than words. So your family will follow your actions more than what you say. So that if your family, if they can see you fasting and praying at night and having good character and working hard and being disciplined, they'll naturally follow. But if you just tell them you need to pray, you need to fast, but they don't see that from you, it's useless. Your words don't mean anything, right? You can't, for example, you can't be a smoker and tell your children not to smoke. It's bad for you. It's a mixed. It doesn't make any sense. So yes, absolutely. You start with yourself and you work on your family, and then that will spread out to the community. Because that's as especially as a father, if you're a father, you are the emir of your little jama'ah. That's what you are, right? And yes, you need to work. Next question from Mohammed Hidr. With the growing facility in the youth in general, what can us as laymen do for dawah to these youth? Ooh, big question. I would recommend um, to inform yourself about things. So I would recommend some books to really get to the heart of the matter. My teacher, Hajj Abu Jafar al-Hambali, has some books out. You can look them up. There's one called The Divine Texts, and there's one called The Divine Lightning. And these are two very, very important books. The Divine Text, there's Nukul Shati. This is by Imam Mustafa Shatti, big Hanbali scholar from about, I think, 150 years ago. And he explains what Sunni Islam is compared to Salafi, and he talks about like what is it in terms of what we believe, our creed, our theology, and then and fiqh, like the madhabs, and then he talks about tasawwuf and when he talks about tasawwuf, and how that is different from the Salafi Wahhabi message. So that's a brilliant book, a very very useful tool to have. I think you'll find it on Amazon. I think Lulu's well, you definitely find it on Amazon. It's called The Divine Texts by Imam Shatti. And then the other one is called Sawa'iq al-Ilahiyya, Sawa'iq. This is the Divine Lightning. And this is by Imam Sulaiman Abdul Wahhab. This is the older brother of the founder of that movement. And this book, I remember I read because I read it when the manuscript translation way back in the day when he was translating it, Hajj Abu Jafar. And that book is where is a letter. Basically, it's a letter to his little brother, and he just like, refutes him on every single point. But what he does is he quotes three people in the whole book. He quotes Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal himself, Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah, and Imam Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah, and he goes through every little point that all these issues that Muhammad Wahhab raised, and he says, listen, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said this. Imam Ahmad ibn Taymiyyah, Taqi ibn Taymiyyah said this. Imam Qayyim al-Jawziyah says this, but you're saying this. Where are you getting this from? Right. And he just goes and that's what he talks to him just over and over again, like every single issue. It's just like you're completely on your own. You're not Hanbali in madhab. You're not on the way of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. You're not even following Imam Taqi ibn Taymiyyah. You're not even following You're not following any of these people. So that's very important from the knowledge standpoint of how to refute this stuff is to be very very blatant and honest about the dangers of it. So to arm yourself with the knowledge, and then again, from the practical side, is to arm yourself with the first, well, what I said in the first question is to arm yourself with your own personal righteousness, because what people are looking for, what people are looking for, a lot of, especially the youth, what they're looking for is they want meaning, right? They want Islam to be meaningful. So you want to make Islam something that's a serious part of their lives. It's not just lip service. It's not just something that we do from time to time, and we're Muslims, we're cultured. No, it has to be meaningful. So we have to talk about the deeper mean. You have to talk about the deeper meanings of Islam, about where they're from. Again, talk about what we just talked about before, about the fact that we are bodies, we are unsat and Allah, we are bodies and spirits. We came into this world. We're originally from paradise. Allah brought us down here. We yearn to go back to Allah. We're the space invaders. We're the extraterrestrials, right? We're the ones who have come here, and we're like the immigrants. We try to recreate paradise here. That's why we like our botanical gardens. That's why we like all these. We like fountains. We like rivers. We like all these kinds of things because we're trying to recreate paradise. We also have the negative side of that, where people try to create utopias on Earth. Right? They're secular people who try to create utopias on Earth. They tried, like Pol Pot in Cambodia. You probably know more about that in your part of the world. But why do they think? Why do they have this idea in their head that people shouldn't die, people shouldn't be hungry, people shouldn't be poor, people shouldn't be? Where are they getting that from? It's inside them, because that's what paradise is like. So I think that's the other way to approach that is we have to talk about something much deeper. We have to talk about really the profundity of Islam, what it really means to be created and to be a slave of Allah. Because if children are not taught meaningful Islam by their parents, then they can become easily susceptible to these nefarious influences, and with Allah alone is every success. I hope that answers your question.
Can I
Um,
something?
well, sorry, just remember, Dulkifli's got his hand up.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
yeah.
saw it. I'll make it brief. I think regarding this movement and why you can see a lot of youth and laymen, they are more attracted to this Salafi movement. Okay, it's because the type of character that they are. Because
Mm,
I teach certain students, and I find that there are some of my students that I'm teaching. I was teaching them earlier this year. They are more attracted to knowledge, and in terms of whatever they have been doing or they are taught in Islam, they want the proof, the evidence that they are studying whatever that they are doing. There's a hadith behind it. So it's like they are thinking about whatever. If there's a hadith, just follow it. And it's like Islam is
mm,
black and white. It's haram and it's forbidden and it's permitted. There's no gray area for you to discuss, because if it goes to all these gray areas, they become confused. So they are attracted
mm.
in terms of all these. Uh, like for example, I have one student. Whatever thought or whatever, uh, for example, if we read the surah, the seerah, then he'll ask, for example, so which hadith, which it was narrated by which ulama, like is it in Bukhari or is it in Muslim, things like that. See, so what I found was that, for example, Sheikh Mustafa al-Bugha, how he countered this argument, because this argument or this approach was actually already existence in Damascus, right, in Syria as well. So that is why, if you see Sheikh Mustafa al-Bugha, what he did to counter these types of movements is that whatever the mutuns, the original mutuns that was uh, authored by the ulama in the past, he
Are the
elaborated on it
evidences?
and he comes with the dalils, right? For
Yeah,
example,
yeah.
Anwar Masalik, for example, Anwar Masalik, it's from Umdatul Salik, right? So
Mm.
he added the evidences for every step of every part of the,
Yeah,
like
every
Ibadah
ruling,
worship.
every
Yeah,
ruling has evidence. Yeah.
every ruling comes with the hadith, for example. And you can find that a lot of a lot of Sheikh Mustafa's work, he did that. Like, so that's what he did to counter that. So
Yeah.
maybe our approach is like we need to use that approach, but to get their attention and then teach them with regards to the other important fundamental things of Islam as well.
Yeah,
Wallahu
and I'll also just counter them, like talk to them about where they get the proofs. Ask them for the proofs for three tawheeds. Ask them for that. Like where do you get tawheed uluhiyya, rububiyyah, and asma? Where do you get that from? Because that doesn't exist in the Quran. That doesn't exist in the Sunnah. It's not in any of the texts of the first few generations. Uh, it's not in Imam Ahmed's. It's not al-I'tiqad by Imam Ahmed bin Hanbal. It's not in Bayan al-Sunnah by Imam Abu Ja'far Tahawi. It's not in Fiqh al-Akbar, Fiqh al-Akbar by Imam Abu Hanif. It's not there. So where is it? Where are you getting this from? You know. So and you can I would add to that as well. Like on that topic of theology, you're gonna find like weird things because there's a strange type of materialist secularism within the Salafiyah. I mean, I'll give you an example. And there's a post on my blog about this, like the question of tawassul, right? This question of tawassul. This is another thing that they get really uh, angry about. Let's say, so tawassul, right? Where you're making tawassul on the Messenger of Allah, so I'm making dua to Allah. Okay. Now, Imam al-Buti and Shaykh al-Fiqh as well has a fatwa on this. It's on my blog, and I quoted a section as well from Qurbi Katakoni by Imam al-Buti. And the point is that when we make dua and we do tawassul or dua, right? It's not different from say when we drink water or when we eat food or when we take paracetamol for a headache, right? All of these things are means, right? We understand that Allah is the mu'athir, right? Allah is the one who produces the effect, right? All of these things are simply means, right? And they're called like asbab ja'aliyah, right? They're apparent means because none of them have the intrinsic power to do anything. Food does not intrinsically satiate your hunger. Water does not intrinsically quench your thirst. Fire does not intrinsically burn. Again, go back to Surah Al-Anbiya, ayat 69, when Ibrahim alayhi salam thrown in the fire. Okay, Allah says, we said to the fire, "Kuni baradan wa salaman ala Ibrahim." Be cool and peaceful for Ibrahim alayhi salam, and that's what it was. It was cool and peaceful. It didn't burn him. Now, so the issue of tawassul, right? What these people say, what Salafiyah say, is they say you can only do tawassul, right? Because this is how they respond to all the hadith about it. They'll say it was only done while he was alive, and that's the only time this person will say, "Well, hold on a second." That right there causes one of two possibilities, both of which are kufr and shirk. Because it's like this: if the Prophet ﷺ is supposed to be alive in order to do tawassul with him, does that mean that he is the mu'athir? Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Does that mean that he's the one producing the effect? Whoops. That's kufr and shirk, right? Or, or if that's not what you mean, you're somehow implying that Allah needs him to be alive in order to produce the effect. Does Allah need him to be alive to produce the effect? No. That's kufr and shirk, right? So the response is like, maybe there's some shirk in your tawheed, brother. Maybe you see that's right. It's very weird. So that's what you're going to see. It's this weird kind of um like secularist materialism. It kind of like creeps into their beliefs, and they start believing that when someone's dead, they're really dead and stuff like this. And again, this is why the book we did recently, Dedicated Reward to the Deceased, addresses that problem, right? Because that's what it leads down, like this sort of denial of the unseen realm almost. But alhamdulillah, there are ways to tackle and approach it, and you have the books, inshallah. You have the method that laid out by Muslim law, like because we have all the evidences. Just because the evidences aren't quoted doesn't mean we don't have any. We have all the proofs, right? Fiqh al-Minhaji, same thing. Fiqh al-Minhaji, right? Which we put out, right? That's Shafi fiqh. All the proofs are there, right? Just because they're not mentioned in the Mutun doesn't mean someone's just making it up. No, they're there. The evidence are there. If you want them, they're there. And Allah alone is every success. Alhamdulillah. Although Kifli Muhammad, he's still waiting.
Yeah. Sorry
Please go
for
ahead. Razor, please go ahead.
It's a interesting discussion. Probably just to add to this, I think for the years I've met friends from others who are more inclined towards Salafi. By and large, I would say it's also due to the fault of the Sunnah as well. And the reason for this, I say, and they give examples. For example, we talk about the importance of praying on time. Sadly enough, some of us even we don't exactly pray on time. So they don't get to see this example, but when they see their Jama'ah, instead, they're very strict in terms of the adherence in terms of praying on time. You know what I mean? So they see this disparity in terms of what is being taught as well as what is being practiced to some extent. Another example, the people who all of us love to read Maulid, for example. We read the Maulid for years and years in Arabic, we still don't understand it. You know? And then when they come to us and kind of ask us for an explanation, all we do is a form of ritual. It's nothing more than that. So they see it as something that's hollow, no substance, sadly because of our competence at really understanding the intention of reciting the Maulid or even having an understanding. So I think we also need to take a look at ourselves as well and kind of reflect on it as well. I think I mean, it's all good to have all this dalil and all that, but I think by and large, most of them you don't even know what dalil you're talking about. You can give them big books and
Well, that's
understand, you know.
yeah.
So I think kind of going back to the basics and then even stuff such as smiling to them, exchanging gifts and those things, simple things that the Prophet has taught. I think that will actually go what I've seen from some of our teachers as well. Afwan, I said something around that.
No, Jazakallah khairan, barakallahu feekum. No, I think you made a good point there. A lot of things that's what I was trying to get earlier about meaningful. Like our Islam has to be meaningful. We have to set examples, right? So you know, if you, as parents, you have to be praying on time, you have to be fasting, you have to be reading Quran, you have to be involved in dhikr. You have to be setting example for your parents, for your kids, because if your kids don't see meaningful Islam in your life, that's when they can fall susceptible to other things, right? So you know, it's not just the evidences. You're right. It's not just the evidences, right? Because we cannot allow ourselves to be complacent. Well, we have all the evidences, therefore we can just sit down and chill out. No, we have to keep working hard. And again, what you mentioned about how the Salafis can be impressive, they can impress people. Yeah, that's the hadith about the Khawarij right there, right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said that. He said that you'll look down on your own prayer when you see their prayer. You'll look down on your own fasting when you see their fasting. You'll look down on you're going to look down on your own worship when you see their worship, right? Because that's what it is. The nature of the Khawarij, the way they are, is that outwardly can be very, very impressive, right? It's like flashy propaganda. Outwardly, it's very, very impressive, but inwardly there's nothing there because again they don't have within their meslek, they don't have any sort of stress on ihsan or zuhud. It's not really there, and they don't actually believe in love, right? They think that love is merely ittiba, right? That love of Allah, the Messenger, is merely ittiba. It's just following. It's not actual an emotional love, like an emotional love of Allah, an emotional love of the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that's why you get this phenomenon. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. The phenomenon called Salafi burnout, right? Where, yeah, it's true. Especially in the West, this thing called Salafi burnout, where someone can be very, very dedicated, right? And they have the big fuzzy beard, and they're going to the masjid, and they're telling people off, and they're really, really active. And then they just burn out. They just run out of energy, right? And like so one day you'll just bump into the guy, and his beard's trimmed down completely. He's no longer wearing the thobe or the jalebi or whatever it is. He's jeans and t-shirt. He's oh. he's exhausted. He's exhausted because there wasn't a deeper love motivating him, right? Because again, a lot of people. I'm like I thought that's my book, Big Step. Like Salafi tends to be for many people, it can sort of be a vehicle for some deeper issues, right? And people have pointed this out. Like for example, like in the UK, for example, there's a lot of like ginger people who become Salafis, right? You don't need my ginger.
Irish? Is it Irish?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Irish because but there's this thing like in the United Kingdom, like people who have like the kind of like orangey hair and the freckles, right? They it's not nice, but they get really they get mocked and bullied at school, right? Like really badly when they're growing up, and then they grow and then they become adults and they're just full of just like resentment and bitterness, right? So so Salafi has that attraction. Think, oh yeah, now I can just be, I can join the group, I can just be angry and rage and like you filthy kuffar, you did this, right? They get into that, you see. Um, so there are some deeper issues, right? Where it's not really a religious thing. It's more of a it's a vehicle for like a deeper rage or deeper issue. This is also pointed out. It's not religious at all. I remember as well. There was a French reporter who flew out to Iraq. This is like 2014 around that time, and met um, and met like interviewed some of these ISIS fighters, right? ISIS fighters who come over from the West, right? And he spent time with them, interviewing them. And he came back. His solution. He says I was shocked at how irreligious they are. I would just they don't talk about Allah, they don't talk about the Quran, they don't pray on time, right? It's just like they don't. There's nothing religious about them, right? So there are these sort of like there's deeper issues going on, right? These people have there's some other objective, they have some other psychological or emotional desire they're trying to fulfill, right? It's not really it's not so much about the proofs. Another good book on this. Yes, very good points, Hasm. Shukran, Barakallahu Feek. Yes, they're very particular about material. Yeah, very particular about material proofs and taking religion very literal. Yes, less zuhd and less love. Um, the other thing on that. Oh, what was I going to say? My train of thought uh, uh, derailed. Yeah, I mean, just that point about how it can just be a vehicle, like Islam just becomes a vehicle for a deeper rage. It's not really a religious thing. Yeah, so a really good book about this as well is a book called The True Believer. And there's a book called The True Believer by Eric Hoffer. And I have a review on my blog. That book is why if you want to go into like the psychological reasons, because what he talks about in that book, the guy was not a Muslim, he was a longshoreman. He wrote this book in the 1950s. But it's a really interesting book. And he talks about why people join certain groups. Like why does someone want to join the Communist Party, or why does someone want to join Greenpeace, or why does someone want to join, whatever it is, right? And he says the ultimately what it boils down to is a fear of an autonomous existence, right? Well, what he means by that is people are scared of the responsibility of trying to figure out what to do with their lives, so it's much easier to just join a group and be told what to do. It's much easier. So do this. That's what the leader do. And it's like, okay. It's an easier way to live. It's an easier way to live, right? Instead of having to think for yourself and do research. Because again, as Sunni Muslims, right? Especially when you go through stages like studying fiqh, for example, you have to think about like cross-referencing, looking at different books, talking to different ulama, weighing up positions, right? You know this if you're a Shafi and fiqh, you know this. Okay, Ibn Hajar says this, Ramli says this. You look at different opinions and values and you try to work it out for yourself. You don't just one thing and that's it, one source, right? That's how Orthodox Muslims are. You take from different sources, but you're not going to find, for example, you're not going to find like an alim from any madhab who only has like one teacher, or all his teachers are just from one madhab. Like he only studied with Shafis or he only studied with Hanafis. Like, no, he branched out, he traveled, he took from Malikis, he took from Hanbalis, different people. That's how Muslim scholars are. And that makes them much more well-rounded people. But he says, but there are certain people who have fear of an autonomous existence. They much prefer to just be part of something. He said, and that's why you find some people, they actually move from group to group to group. Right. So you can have one guy, he's like a Salafi, and then he joins like a political movement, and then he joins a Sufi tariqa, and then it's like what's going on here? It's like the doctrine is totally different, but he's looking for that same thing. He just wants to be part of something, and he just wants to be told what to do. He doesn't want to be left to think for himself. And I have theories about why that is. I mean, I think in the West, again, I can't speak for Singapore, Malaysia, but definitely I think in the West, with like what I've seen in Canada, the United States, I think the education system kind of prepares people for that, makes them susceptible to it because you're not taught to do critical thinking, you're not taught to do research, you're just taught to parrot and go with the flow and conform. So well, yeah, you become an adult. It's just easy. It's just easy, right? Like someone just takes care of your Islam for you and tells you what to do, um, you're not left to actually think and compare and read and research. So that's another thing. There are deeper emotional and psychological needs as to why someone becomes a Salafi. It's not. And then Bill Kibb's absolutely right. It's not just the evidences. The evidences might work for some people, um, and it's good like as opposed to other cults and other organizations, because there's all that stress on Quran and Sunnah, Quran and Sunnah, Quran and Sunnah. You have someone to talk to them about. You say, okay, let's talk Quran and Sunnah, and then you can sit them down and show them the evidences. That works for some of them, but there are deeper emotional issues at play, and Allah knows best.
I think
Uh,
I think we look if you just want to talk about that movement, we
like
can
all
do
day.
it all night. There's so many
Yeah,
things to
well, we have. Yeah,
do.
okay.
About
Yeah. Well, there's a question.
119.
Well, okay. Here's the thing. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, right? Those of us who are of the Sunnis, we're not guilty of that. We are uh we're on we are doing the ihtisam bihamdillah. We're clean to the Jama'ah because the Messenger of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said that in the hadith read by Imam Ahmed, author of Ibn Abbas, where he said, "Alaykum bis sawad al-a'zam." Right, is upon you to follow the Sawad al-A'zam. Sawad al-A'zam, as Imam Manthur says in Lisan al-Arab, is Jami'an Nas wa Jumhurahum, right? You follow the vast majority. That's what it is. The vast majority, the Ashris, the Maturidis, the Atharis, or the Hanbalis, like Ibn Jawzi, the four madhabs, the Tasawwuf of Junayd, the Tasawwuf of Abu Qadir Jilani. That's the majority. That's what we stick to, right? It's these other groups that break away from that. They broke away from that, and that's why they have names that indicate it, right? Like Khawarij, Kharaja, right? Shia, right? They left. Mu'tazila, I'tazilu, right? They've left. They isolate themselves, right? So it's their job to come back. It's their job to come back to the vast majority, the overwhelming majority of the ummah, of the Muslim body. It's their job. We're not guilty of that because we are adhering to um, the overall majority. It's their job to come back and not split from the Muslim body, or the vast majority of the Muslim body. That's their job.
I think with regards to discussions and facing the Salafi movements, I think those in the UK are facing greater challenges than the ones in Singapore, because in Singapore you're not allowed to, like, for example, I know in UK you have, is it a speaker's corner somewhere where you can just talk?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then there's
Yeah.
situation where I see that a lot of what happens is that the Salafi brother will just go to a mosque and just create havoc and like have a
Yeah.
debate or open debates with the imam over there. You're not allowed to do all those things in Singapore.
Yeah. Well, that's actually a good thing, I would say. Because but again, that goes back to what we're talking about in the book of Inward Sin. That goes back to what we're talking about here, right? Because a lot of these debates, again, it's just ego. It's just ego. It's just like I'm going to show you, and I'm going to bring my evidence. And like people have approached me. I've been approached sometimes. People say like, "Hey, you know some stuff. You need to meet so and so." It's like, why? Like I'm supposed to have a debate with someone it's entertainment, like it's a rap battle or something, right?
All the
He'll say something and quote some
people.
verses, you know, and I'll come back and I'll quote my verses, and then there'll be a DJ in the background. All right, it's like it's not. This isn't. It's not entertainment. This is about salvation. This is about your hereafter. This isn't about playtime and amusement. It's not.
Yeah,
That's not what it is. And then again, it's and Imam Al-Buti, I think we talked about this again. It's coming up in the next session. Talks about things like there's these people who are heavily involved in this quote unquote the Dawah activity, the debating and so forth. But it says, but their actual implementation of Islam is not really there. They're lazy with their prayers. They don't do extra fasting. They don't do adhkar. They don't read Quran. you know, and then they sort of see like, well, I don't have to do that stuff because I'm a debater. I don't have to do that stuff because I'm out there. I'm, it's no, this is not how it works. It all goes back to your relationship with Allah. We have to be working on a relationship with Allah and drawing nearer to Allah, working to please Allah. We can't be caught up with all this, uh, egoism and trying to entertain ourselves and turn Islam into rap battles. Like, no, that's not what it's about. That's not what it's about. It's about Allah. It's about Allah first and foremost. Wallahi alhamd.
Allah.
Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah, been here for a while. SubhanAllah.
Yeah, like I said, if you talk about this topic,
We'll be
will take hours.
we'll be here
not
until
stop
next
talking.
we'll be here until the next session. Yeah.
Yep.
We'll spend a month talking about this. SubhanAllah. But is there any final questions? And any no, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah.
So when are we doing our next session?
I'm not sure. You're traveling, right? So
Yeah, no, we can do no, we can meet in a month's time. Like anything like the 21st of August. I'll be back before then, inshallah.
yeah, I think that works. 21 of August, inshallah. Yeah. I think
Okay,
it's okay.
close. 21st of August, inshallah. We'll aim for that, inshallah. That we'll put as a provisional date. If anything comes up, we'll let you know. But that's fine.
Okay,
Well,
well,
I'll
alhamdulillah.
let you finish.
Barakallahu Ustaz Mahdi. Yeah. So thank you everyone for attending. I apologize if we exceeded our time talking about certain topics, exciting topics, interesting topics. But alhamdulillah, inshallah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make our attention of what we discuss just to go nearer to Him, inshallah. So let us close our sessions for tonight with Surah Al-Asr and Tasbih Kafarah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusrin illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus solihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم سبحان ربك رب العزه عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Sound.